here in Iowa and all across this country, we will defeat the most dangerous president in the history of this country.
We've had enough of an America where the government works better and better and better for a thinner and thinner slice at the top.
We choose truth over lies.
So that's just a little clip from a video that I just posted where these political candidates are described as working the crowds, according to a news anchor, which is apropos, very precise, way to describe what's going on. And so we heard Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Joe Biden. It's the same old story. I mean, like, it's getting ridiculous. Like, I don't know what to say, like that. It's obvious they're actors, and they're just reading a script and working the crowds, working the masses, really. And to me, this is more and more truth that's just right in front of us. I mean, Elizabeth Warren is stating an obvious fact that the government and really the central banking systems worldwide are in place to benefit a small, and she even states a smaller and smaller group of people, which is also actually true, even amongst the wealthy. They're not going to stop being greedy. Like, they're not only going to take from the bottom and put it in their pocket, they're going to take from everybody, quote unquote, below them. So even the top is getting thinner and thinner, and that's just this sort of system, this churning that's in place, and I literally describe it as literally like a screwdriver, just constantly turning, a little bit every single day to, siphon more and more money up to the top. And so that's, again, mainstream news out of the mouth of a political candidate, and it's obvious. And so she's stating an obvious fact that, is not a conspiracy. And so, but it's not going unchecked, it will just continue. And so this, to me, again, just one of the many, many reasons I believe that we're in the end times. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is discerning, the sign of the times, and like the world that we live in, and why I believe really everything points to the fact that we're in the end times, because of how ridiculous and broad the lies are, and these actors. And so we just have a large group of people in the world, not just these political, talking heads, but people that literally will watch these debates and take them seriously. I think that's the thing for me that I pretty much know that we're in the end times, because it's a large group of people, and it's, I would say, a majority of the world. And I'm not better than that group morally in any way, but I know, and I'm very thankful for this, that this is just a movie, it's a show. And the fact that so many people talk about this like they're not actors, to me is pretty much, to me, conclusive that we're in the end times, because a vast majority of the people are only allowed to talk about the narrative that's being fed to us through the corporate media, and we know that it's just a show, and it's not rooted in anything real. It's just fake beef. It's just drama. It's working the crowds. Literally the best way to put it, as that news anchor states, is it's exactly what it is. And in my opinion, ultimately, this working of the crowds, the stirring of the masses, is all to implement the mark of the beast. And that, to me, has to be the end game, or else none of this really makes sense. But the thing I sort of want to talk about is the times that we live in. We have to assess it with a sober mind, especially people who get in some kind of public setting and talk about the end times through the Bible. In a sober way, we have to assess, like Jesus requires us to, the sign of the times, and he tells us that we should look out for these things, and people who are into that type of thing, but also just people who are spiritual, who are drawn to the Bible, and all that kind of stuff. We have to be aware and of these things, and Jesus gives us fair warning, that these things will take place. And to me, so why do I think we're in the end times? Because a lot of things are happening simultaneously. It's not one thing. This is not a time where anybody who's talking about end times is cherry picking anything, because in the past, yeah, people have said that we're in the end times, and maybe one or two things were happening around them that, could give people insight, that we could be in the end times. Like maybe earthquake activity was increasing more than usual, or there was a war that was breaking out, and that would fulfill wars and rumors of wars. There were just technological advancements, maybe that were happening, at a fast rate, and there would be a falling away, apostasy, homosexuality, all these kind of things happening. But the thing that's, again, unique about the time that we live in now, and to me should give a lot of people who do this boldness and really almost certainty that we're in the end times, is the pervasiveness of technology making the mark of the beast really trivial to implement. It's to me, the difficult thing is thinking that people would be gullible enough to take it, but watching these kind of political snippets makes it, people would do it, because if they believe these actors are only allowed to talk about these actors, and I know many people, I would say everybody in my life actually is only allowed to speak about what's happening, through the media, the corporate media. They're not allowed to go to any other narrative. And so to me, those are people that are being groomed for the mark of the beast. Again, I hope that everybody refuses, but the Bible states that that's not the case. And so, I think that the hard part is not the technical implementation. It's just getting enough people, lots of people, to be gullible enough to take it. And so that's here, and that's just, it's been here for sure for a while, but with how quickly technology is advancing and how much pressure really all these corporations are putting on their people to produce, and to produce profits and to advance and all push the boundaries of technology and production. It's happening at a very, very rapid rate, in the days that we live in now. And so that's certainly not slowing down. Just like what Elizabeth Warren is saying, the wealth transfer from the bottom to the top is also not slowing down. Everything is accelerating in these days. All the jitteriness of the stock market is accelerating. There's more and more volatility in the markets. There's more and more volatility in our own lives at the personal level. Even on these Ball Earth, Flat Earth hangouts, you can see that they're just really just a shit show. It's just volatility there. There's just volatility rising everywhere, and it's not subsiding one iota. And so to me, this sort of, and we see these tensions brewing in China, protests and all that kind of stuff, and then the earth is volatile. The physical earth itself, with all these earthquakes and all these storms and all that, the earth is increasing in volatility. And so all these things to me are have to culminate into something, spiritual, or else it would just be a very, very strange confluence of events. But it's lining up exactly with the Bible, and to me, the fact that there are so many actors, but not just that, most people are falling for this narrative and only allowed to talk about that narrative, and these are just normal people who are being oppressed, people who, like in the video I just stated, are being squeezed out of the middle class. They also don't talk about it, and so I think that all this stuff, to me, this centralization, is ultimately just so God can flick the switch whenever he wants, because if we don't have this centralization and people live in sort of pockets, at least for a time, they could potentially be unaffected, by decisions at the quote unquote top. And, for spiritual people, we know that the top is God. But even from a government, earthly level, they are setting this up to where their decisions impact greater and greater number of people, and in my opinion, ultimately everybody, through the mark of the beast. And so that's by design. One would think that all of this volatility leading to centralization would not be just a coinky dink. That's a stretch for people at this point. And then for me, also strong evidence is just that the entire religious community is sold out. They're just really a subset, of this corporate structure, and they're kept silent through, tax exempt status. And I'm talking all religions. It's not a shot to one in particular. I mean, they're not allowed to speak out against how absurd this show is, this dog and pony show that's going on, at the political level, and then ultimately in place as window dressing for what's really going on through central banking, and this transfer of wealth that Elizabeth Warren eloquently states is happening at an accelerated rate. And so to me, the world is becoming unstable financially, spiritually, morally, intellectually, everything like that. And so there was an article that I saw on Reddit recently where this was like people like places like United Nations are publishing, stuff like this. And this, I think the article was in 2014 where they were, I'll post a link below if I can get a hold of it, but they're talking about how unstable the system is due to the wealth transfer that's happening. And so these are, again, sort of mainstream outlets and, organizations, entities at the, macro level, at the worldwide level that are publishing these things. And so these are not conspiracies. This is happening right before our eyes. And then it's not surprising, obviously, that anti-truthers or like ball earthers would be opposed to talking about it, but quote unquote truthers are. So they're not even, putting their feet in the ring when it comes to this kind of stuff. So to me, even further evidence that that this thing is going to go unabated. It's just going to keep rolling on. And then to me, the end game has to be, like I said, the mark of the beast, or else it would just not make any sense. And so, we live in a time now where everything is in place that could satisfy the quote unquote end times. And I can't imagine it being further down the road, because the world is unlivable even for non-religious people. People are just bored, they're broke, they just find this place evil, intellectually boring, perverted, all that kind of stuff. Scary, even with all these shootings, fake shootings, all that kind of stuff. I can't see this place being livable even 5 years down the road, even for non-religious people, much less religious people, much less the quote unquote elect, the 144,000 who the Bible states that the end times will be cut short for their sake. And that makes sense why it would be cut short for their sake, because God would use as a litmus how unlivable the earth can get for righteous people. He's not going to check the temperature of people who are Satanists, who enjoy, all this perversion and wealth transfer, even if they're getting squeezed themselves. Satanists don't care. They just go along with Satan. That's just the way it is, through good or bad. And righteous people like Jesus Christ, who's our best example, goes along with the Most High through good or bad. He just has allegiance to him under all circumstances. And Satanists, people on the left-hand side, have the same for Satan. Good or bad, they go through it with him. And, that's what we have, really everywhere on earth right now. And so to me, the litmus test is any group of righteous people, God taking their temperature, so to speak, would they feel comfortable living in an environment, in a world that is this evil, and it's getting worse. And so to me, that's why I don't think that there's no America 10 years from now or 15 years from now. Definitely not on those timescales, purely from a financial perspective. Even if there was no Bible or anything, that the system is unstable here. And I just watched another video about how we'll only have negative interest rates if the U.S. goes into a recession. We're already in a recession, but just to sort of entertain that, news clip, it can't be far away, because Americans are broke. And then the fact that we're at such low interest rates and then we're going to negative is just, squeezing the last bit out, and just pushing as much money out there, making it available to people, credit, because if they don't have, any money themselves, they have to have access to credit at least, and quote unquote cheap money to spend, and, just kind of lube the system and keep money flowing, money velocity up. Because once it stops, all these stores and all these places that are selling things that most people don't need to survive, will just dry up. And so that's the end game. And so that can't be that far away. if people are talking about negative interest rates in the mainstream news, that's bad. That's a bad sign. And to me, things like that have a trickle effect fairly quickly. Like once, even if you have like a city, a relatively small city, and then even 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people lose their job, that has an immediate impact on communities like that. Because even if a person doesn't lose their job and they know somebody who's lost their job, they have to change their spending. They may not be able to go out as much, just restaurants do things, restaurants, income suffers and all that kind of stuff. And then they may have to start, limiting people's hours. And then there's a trickle down effect that happens fairly quickly, for people who study, economies and the impact of layoffs and stuff like that. And so that's happening. We see that happening, and the homeless community growing is just one example of how that's very, very obvious that that's the case. And again, it's in the mainstream news. And so this is going to keep accelerating, especially people believe these Bernie Sanders and these Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden, this narrative that we're being fed that, they're going to somehow rescue us from Trump, who's the worst president or whatever. Like, the presidents and the political people don't do anything. They don't matter at all. All they're doing is putting stuff in the news about tariffs, like Trump signed a tariff, but the tariffs are not even real. They're just news. They're talking points for CEOs on conference calls to talk about things when all they're there for is just to not blame the fact that Americans are broke and not buying as much, and we're the main sort of customer worldwide. And so Trump has to put something, on Twitter in the news that there are tariffs, that are causing the slowdown, when it's just really the fact that Americans are broke and money is not moving around the system at the lower and middle class. And so that's what it is. And so the real system that's at play here is the central banks, and what they're doing, like Elizabeth Warren said, put money in fewer and fewer people's hands. And so this is going to keep moving on, and going on. And so, to me, if we're in the end times, America's Mystery Babylon, and that place is prophesied to have famines and like food shortages. And so mournings, people, these are the plagues, that are prophesied for this place, and then ultimately it will be destroyed. And so to me, just coincidentally, it looks like our economy is slowing down. There's a lot of people who are not allowing this to change or even allowed to talk about it, how ridiculous it is, and even the religious community. And so, to me, I don't know how this could not be leading to an end game of famine. So to me, once famines hit America, we're pretty much at the end. So the thing that could happen first to initiate the quote unquote end times, I suspect that it's actually God's elect being raptured, because like I said earlier, the end times will be cut short for their sake. And so to me, they'll be taken away because they see this thing as a complete joke, and they're just essentially, they should be suicidal. If anybody is the elect and they care even slightly about God and they don't want to sin, they can't be here. And so to me, they'll be removed, and whatever that group is called, they're taken away. And then if I'm witnessing that, I'm out, right after that. To me, it's like, I'm not dealing with famines and dumpster diving for food and stuff like that. I already hate this place. So then the famines, and then I think those are plagues that, God's people are told in Revelation that to come out of her, my people, so you don't experience those plagues. And so to me, there's a group, an elect group, whatever you call them, a group closest to God, that are taken away. And he doesn't want them to experience those things. And then there will be famines, that will lead to like confusion for sure, people missing. And then, that would be a sight to be had, to see that poor people taken away, all these people just removed from the world stage. And then that will be confusion, worldwide as to what's happening. And then people who look to the government for a narrative for that, to me, will ultimately take the mark of the beast. And then that will be the thing that quote unquote kicks off the end times. And then once something like that happens on a mass scale, the economy will obviously take a hit. And then, there'll be food shortages, just confusion. I mean, cars will just be, crashing into other cars and all that, and then it would just be madness, you know, and then obviously that would affect credit markets and then all that type of stuff. And so then, you know, there will begin, in my opinion, the destruction of this place called America, famines and all that. And then to me, that will start motivating and the institution of the mark of the beast. And then in order to get access to food or government quote unquote help, you'll have to go get a microchip because people were taken away and missing, and you know, they don't want other people to go missing by these quote unquote aliens, even though they're God's angels in these UFOs. And then people will start getting chipped, you know, and then, but people, even here in America, will refuse it with their life. And then they are the group that make it through the quote unquote tribulation. And so there's a second group that have to go through tribulation, you know, before they are given quote unquote like these white robes that are described in Revelation. So there's a group that's taken away before, and then there's another group that are you know, go through this tribulation and refuse the mark of the beast and don't accept the government narrative or what they require, don't buy into their story about these quote unquote aliens. And then that the summation of those two groups are God's children, all the spirits on the right hand side, and then all those in the past who have passed away on God's right hand side and have not lived in this generation. The sum of those three are God's children. And so everybody else is just an actor, you know, like these people and people who believe these narratives that are fed to us by these politicians who are just actors. That's all God's left-hand side. And then after that, it's just chaos. It's just people fighting amongst one another, wars breaking out, and then, you know, just death, you know. And then the Bible says that ultimately God will instruct his angels to come and kill everybody who has taken the mark of the beast. And so it's just God literally just kind of cleaning up, you know. It's just like the after show kind of thing, you know. Then it's people who are just, in my opinion, flesh and bone, who just don't have any spiritualness in them. They're not even necessarily evil people, actively evil. They're just actors, you know, programmed to go along with the government narrative and to only talk according to what's presented in the corporate media. And then they take the mark of the beast, and then God just cleans up the place. And then after that, it's the earth is replenished, and then the kingdom of heaven is established for those on God's right-hand side. And may we be one of them, because to be on the left-hand side, you'd have to be just a complete idiot to go along with these actors when their amount of contradictions and hypocrisy and lies is just absurd now. And so to me, if this is not the end game, the earth would be unlivable for not even just the elect, but just any normal person, you know, 5 years from now. And so to me, I think that all this stuff will start accelerating. Certainly the financial, you know, downfall, really. They keep calling it growth, like growth is decelerating. No, it's like the economy is slowing down. It's just what it is. And then it's not going to slow down and all of a sudden rev up again. It can't, because like Elizabeth Warren said, fewer and fewer people have money. What are they going to do? Just magically open up their bank accounts for everybody to just go and take whatever they want? Of course not. God has programmed these people to be infinitely greedy. You know, they will do everything and anything to acquire more and more of these quote unquote Federal Reserve notes, these debt notes. That they're programmed to do that, and they won't stop. And so that's just the way it is. They're literally kamikazes. They're just they're just literally programmed to, it's not funny, to like destroy the earth and then ultimately themselves, you know, through the mark of the beast. And so that's you know, the world that we live in. And I think that, you know, I just caution people to like be careful. You know, for me personally, I think, because I have like an engineering background, statistical background, I just don't think it's worth the risk for me personally to plan to be here for very, very long, because I already don't like this place, borderline hate this place, despise this place, except for a couple of things that I still enjoy. Golf, you know, sometimes, you know, the conversations I get to have with people, they're not all bad, but for the most part, generally, the thoughts of living here overall, especially with all the deceptions that have happened. This is not even talking about flat earth. To me, flat earth is just literally like 10 nails on the on the top, just solidifying that we're in the end times. If you bring flat earth into this, it just becomes very, very obvious that not only are people here to deceive, but actively lie and distort, our reality and hide God. To me, that just makes it even more obvious that we're in the end times. So, I just personally don't think that it makes sense to risk being in a place that it looks like, chaos is not just, in China and, Venezuela and all these different places where it's in the news, like the chaos will start, hitting America. I just can't imagine what will happen when all these atheists, these gaytheists are just uninhibited. There's not as much police protection to just, have quote unquote safety, and some, semblance of like, order and all that kind of stuff. And so once that sort of threshold is reached and things, are not able to be kept as secure, I don't want to be anywhere near that. I'll be honest, like I don't even want to be 5 days from that kind of thing on earth. I just don't. And it's just out of caution. And I'm not rifling through garbage cans. I'm not dangling through trees in the wilderness to stay alive and wait for some UFO or something. No, to me, that's insane. Like I would never, and I'm just being totally honest about the way I'm planning things. That I don't recommend, for anybody who has an ear to hear. It doesn't make sense, because the things that could happen if a place like America doesn't have really this sort of decorum, to me is very scary, with the amount of homosexuality and perverse spirits that are out here. And the Bible describes Mystery Babylon as being filled with every foul and unclean and hateful bird. And so so you can imagine, at least we have some order right now. If that changes even slightly and people, even, just the homeless and people who are desperate, act upon their desperation, to me, this thing could get bad, really, really quickly. And I want no part of that. And so, I just caution people to be aware how quickly things can change. And then to me, once things become noticeably bad in America, and it won't take long, you just need food shortages for 1 or 2 days at the most, not even that, people to start getting desperate. Like our body is not designed to like be without food for like weeks and weeks, like no one has trained their body like that at all. And then, once people get hungry, they have the term I'm hangry, people get desperate, and all that. And then they just, once people start realizing that there's no order, law and order, then they'll just start doing who knows what. And I don't want to know what. That's my point. And so, I will happily leave this place gracefully and, wish it well, whatever, if people want to stay, that's up to them. But, I just think that I have to be fair, and warn people that this stuff, to me, is going to get worse. I think that's fairly obvious. It could get worse quickly, and it also could get evil and satanic very, very quickly, because only, people who are satanic could fall for this kind of government-fed propaganda. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.